Even though the Rangers missed out on a trade for Dylan Cease, they're still looking to upgrade the rotation. But at this point, what all is there left to get? We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, the Rangers missed out on a Dylan Cease trade. He is headed to the San Diego Padres in a trade that was a little bit lighter of a return than I was honestly expecting. The Padres get 2 years of Dylan Cease. They needed some pitching help desperately after all the pitching that has left them after last year. And shocker, AJ Preller making a big old trade for a potential star. That's just what that man does. And he also makes top 100 prospects just grow on trees because the guy is incredible at developing a farm system. And the trade ultimately was, again, a little lighter than I expected, but still something that I thought the Rangers could have beaten. But at this point where we are, 2 days removed from it, I'm not that mad or worried that the Rangers did miss out on it. The return for the White Sox was Drew Thorpe, who was their 4th best prospect, 64th in ESPN's top 100. Also, Jairo Iriarte, 7th in the system, 109th overall. These are all according to ESPN. Samuel Zavala, an outfielder, 12th in the system, and right-handed pitcher Steven Wilson, who is a reliever, who will probably get a decent chunk of the high-leverage innings in Chicago. Now, Cease, I talked a lot about it on Wednesday's show. He is a very polarizing pitcher, and I think a little bit of his horrible season last year was a little bit of bad luck and a little bit of bad defense from the White Sox, which won't be the case in San Diego. Won't be the case in San Diego, and I don't think would have been the case in Texas. But we're here to talk about Texas Rangers, who did not get Dylan Cease, and you think, okay, well, they've needed a starting pitcher. It's been an obvious tie to Montgomery that there's been no movement, no updates, no nothing on that situation for weeks, and I don't know if he's ever going to sign with the Major League team at this point. I mean, we're, less than 2 weeks away from the season, and I don't know what the heck it's going to take to move that needle and to get Jordan Montgomery on a freaking team. But after this trade happened, Jeff Wilson, formerly of the Star-Telegram, now of Rangers Today, he tweeted out, quote tweeting Jeff Passan's tweet breaking the trade. He said, hashtag Rangers won't be done looking for a starter. The whole thing wasn't a hashtag, just Rangers. So I thought this was interesting because I didn't see anybody else saying that the Rangers are still definitely going to go in and find another starting pitcher. And my question immediately after that was, well, first off, I thought, okay, good. They could still use a little help in the rotation. I still like Cody Bradford. I'd like him a little better as a long reliever. But if he's your number 5, that's fine. Again, I've talked about it a million times. It's about the depth of this rotation. And behind him, there's not much because the only other pitcher that was even mentioned by Bruce Bochy as a guy who's fighting for a rotation spot is Jose Urena. And that's not ideal for a team with World Series aspirations and aspirations to challenge the Astros and the Mariners for an AL West title. But my next thought after Rangers are going for another starter is, okay, who's left? Who's left at this point? There are obviously 2 free agent starting pitchers that are represented by an agent whose name rhymes with Schmott Schmorris, and obviously one of them is a former Ranger, Jordan Montgomery. Duh. Blake Snell. Duh. Clevenger appears to be headed back to the White Sox, which I'm fine with. Didn't really want a part of that anyway. Rich Hill is still looking for a team, but he's 44 years old. You could look for a Jake Odorizzi reunion, maybe. But again, there is not much out there. Then you look at the trade market, and there's not even really anybody that's rumored to be on the trade market. There were some ties for the Rangers, looking at Marlins pitchers, and I think that might be where the Rangers look next, because obviously if the Montgomery thing was going to happen, I think it would have already happened, or there's no more leverage plays at this point, unless the Rangers, God forbid, if they have some injury to a starting pitcher like in the last 2 weeks of spring training, I would lose my dang mind, but thankfully for them, that hasn't happened yet. So there is no added leverage for Jordan Montgomery over the Rangers to get a deal done for them to up their offer, which I don't think has moved since maybe December or November or whenever the last offer was. It has not moved in a long, long time. And I don't know that they're going to look at Blake Snell. I think they might want to, if Snell is going to take a one-year deal, if either one of these guys are going to take a shorter-term deal, would the Rangers feel better about it, not tying up 150, 160, however many millions of dollars these guys are looking for, and they can bridge the gap until there's some more certainty with their TV contract situation, which again I feel is kind of overblown at this point. But I understand the mindset of being a little cautious. I don't agree with it. I don't love it, but I understand it. So if you're not going to go for Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, which it seems like, just emotionally prepare yourself. I have for months that neither one of those are happening. But there are some trade candidates. And these aren't guys who I think are actively being shopped. I think there have been discussions with both of these teams, at least at some point. The Rangers touching base with both these teams, because these are two of the teams that develop homegrown starting pitching better than just about anybody. Those two teams are the Marlins and the Brewers. Now, the Marlins are still, both these teams are in, reasonably competitive divisions in that they both have aspirations to win them. Not that they're both of equal caliber, and actually maybe the Marlins don't have aspirations to win the NL East, but both of them have playoff aspirations this year. But if these guys who I'm about to mention are traded, it kind of sinks those playoff aspirations and punts those down the road. Even though the Rangers, I think, could give up pieces that definitely could help these teams compete as soon as this year. But the two guys I'm looking at are the left-handed pitcher Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins and Freddy Peralta, the righty of the Brewers. I think both these guys are ideal candidates and guys that I'm not scared of trading away major pieces for. Major pieces like Ezekiel Duran or perhaps even Leo Taveras. I think Ezekiel Duran can be a first division starting shortstop or second baseman or third baseman or wherever you want to put him, and he can hit the crap out of the baseball. I mean, he was a borderline all-star last year, and he might end up being a multi-time all-star in his career. I think that highly of this kid. Leo Taveras was also a borderline all-star at the break last year. I mean, he was amazing. He was a starter on a World Series winning team. Those kind of players don't grow on trees, especially when Zeke Duran has 4 years of club control left, can play the outfield, he can play shortstop, he can play second, he can play third, and he can hit like crazy. Leo Taveras has been a streaky hitter, but he's shown the ability to at least be a league average hitter and a very good defender in center field, and he's got 3 years of club control, and both those guys are pretty darn young. And I think both those guys will be under consideration if the Rangers are looking at trading for Luzardo or Freddy Peralta. I think the Rangers will also consider including Brock Porter in a deal here. I don't think that Porter was on the table for a Dylan Cease trade. Just getting 2 years of that guy and someone with so much variability. Grant and I talked about it on yesterday's show of him losing a mile an hour, him walking so many people, and being a high velocity guy who's got that many innings on his arm. He's been incredibly durable over his career, but pitcher elbows and shoulders and ligaments and UCLs, those are finicky things, and that has all the makings of a guy who could end up with an injury this year, because no pitcher stays healthy forever. I mean, Max Scherzer was incredibly healthy for the first 12, 13, 14, 15 years of his career, and the last couple of years has been sidelined with injuries. Last 3 years, and including this year, he has been sidelined for a decent chunk of the season with injuries. And so not everybody is going to be Max Scherzer either and make it until their late 30s, until they start having any kind of injury concerns. But looking at the package that the Padres gave up, they didn't give up Jackson Merrill, who's if not their top prospect, then their number 2 prospect, guy who's 20 years old, going to make the big leagues as a center fielder. They didn't give up their top pitching prospect either in Dylan Lesko, who is a guy who I think is right around the range of Brock Porter, where people see him. I'm going to talk a little bit about Brock Porter in the spring breakout game later on in this show. But I think that those guys are the kind of guys that are on the table. And again, I've said it a million times, but cheap, controllable, reliable starting pitching, that is the hardest thing to get in Major League Baseball. That is the thing you give up big assets like Zeke Duran, like Leo Taveras. They're still not going to, the Rangers are not going to consider trading Evan Carter or Wyatt Langford for either of these guys, or again, pretty much anybody around Major League Baseball that would ever be considered for a trade. But coming up, we're going to talk about why I'm so excited about a potential, why the Rangers should look at trading for Freddy Peralta and Jesus Luzardo, and what makes those guys so darn good. Right after this word from our sponsors. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this. Now, through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of quarter 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. I'm banking very heavily on my, Alabama Crimson Tide. You can also bet on, whoever you think is going to make the tournament and make a deep run, or if you're looking to place some bets on Major League Baseball, either awards or where the Rangers are going to finish. Last I checked, the Rangers had an 88.5 over under. I would probably feel pretty good about taking that over, but go check out all the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, be the first to get local insight from MLB local experts on the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Now, be sure to check out those previews. They were a lot of fun. I made sure to talk a lot of smack to the other AL West Locked On teams, so be sure to tune in for that. I had a lot of fun recording that. Now, let's look at why Freddy Peralta and why Jesus Luzardo should be the Rangers' targets if they are pivoting and looking to upgrade this rotation, not just for this year, but for years to come, and to be able to do it at a cost-controlled level. Now, both Freddy Peralta and Jesus Luzardo, they are both in their mid-20s. Freddy Peralta is 27, Jesus Luzardo is 26, and both of these guys have been fairly consistent for the last couple of years. Peralta has a little bit longer of a track record of success, and Luzardo really had that breakout season last year and hadn't had all that much sustained success before. But both these guys are pretty cost-controlled. Right now, Jesus Luzardo is making, I believe, $5.5 million this year. Yes, $5.5 million in his second year of arbitration. He's got 4 seasons of arbitration, so this year plus 2025 plus 2026, so 3 seasons of club control. He is going to be age 29 a free agent. So his age 26, 27, and 28 seasons is what you're getting. One of the better lefties in Major League Baseball as a starting pitcher. Both these guys are fantastic at striking out opposing hitters. Both of them, well, Freddy Peralta wasn't as good as Jesus Luzardo at limiting those walks, but both of them have been, fairly consistent. Both of them gave you a decent number of innings last year, 165 and 2/3 innings for Freddy Peralta last year, and for Jesus Luzardo, 178 and 2/3. So pretty decent bulk from both these guys. Freddy Peralta has also got 3 years of club control. He's making $5.5 million this year. Kind of interesting that both of them are making the exact same amount this year. But the difference between Peralta's contract and Jesus Luzardo's contract is that Peralta is not guaranteed for 2 more seasons after this. He's got a club option for $8 million in 2025, his age 29 season, and another club option in 2026, again for $8 million, his age 30 season. He has also got some bonuses in his contract for Cy Young winning and also finishes, top 5 finishes. All of those have different bonuses. He's got a $100,000 bonus if he's an All-Star, got a bonus for a Gold Glove, got a bonus for World Series MVP, LCS MVP, comeback player, reliever of the year, and also Silver Slugger, which I'm sure was more relevant when he signed that contract than it is right now. But I think he signed that contract not much more. Okay, that was 2021, before the 2021 season when he signed that contract. So it did have a couple years where it had some relevancy. But I think that's kind of funny, having a Silver Slugger award bonus in a pitcher's contract. But I digress. He was in the National League, so that was an option there. But I think both these guys are definitely people who would very much help the Rangers rotation and get a cost-controlled pitcher, which, again, is the hardest thing to do. And it's even harder to get it from teams who have competitive aspirations. And both those teams do. I mean, I feel like it's maybe a little misguided on both their parts, because I don't see either of those teams making the playoffs this year, unless a lot of things break right, because both of them had some injury issues this year. I mean, right now, I was surprised that the Milwaukee Brewers looked like they were going to go for it, and signing Rhys Hoskins, that was an interesting deal. There was I believe a 2-year deal, at least has an option for a second year, in signing Rhys Hoskins, who's, was one of the better hitters on this market. They needed it. Both these teams are really good at developing starting pitching, not so much at developing hitting. And the Brewers, I think their lineup is a little bit better than the Marlins, but the Rangers, dangling these pieces of, either Leo Taveras or Ezekiel Duran, it might take both. I'd be really hesitant to trade both of those guys, especially because, if there is, some kind of injury to an outfielder or extended injury to Corey Seager, you don't have Zeke Duran as your guy to fill in every day. I feel okay about Josh Smith being a fill-in every day for Corey Seager. But again, I'm not quite sure the upside, at least offensively, is anywhere near what Zeke Duran is doing. I think it could be at least a league average hitter. I really do. I really like Josh Smith. And I really love him if he is your second backup, super utility infielder. Like, that's an amazing spot for Josh Smith, something that he's overqualified for. But again, you don't want to take too much from your current Major League team to mortgage it to make other parts of your Major League team better, because then it makes your team a little bit less deep if you can do that from the farm system and kind of sacrifice, years down the road. I think Brock Porter might eventually provide more value to this club than Zeke Duran will over the next 3 years. Porter over his, hopefully 6 years of club control that he gets in his full span, hopefully with the Rangers, and even makes it to the big leagues and is pretty darn good for those 6 years. But right now, Zeke Duran is a little bit more valuable. Same with Leo Taveras for his next 3 years. He's a little bit more valuable to the right now. And you kind of have to convince both these clubs that, like, hey, you might want to punt on this year, because that's what these teams would be doing. Right now, these are their top starting pitchers for their respective teams. Both of these guys are going to be the anchors of their staff. And Luzardo was a little bit more of the anchor last year than I think they expect him to be, especially with Sandy Alcantara on the roster. But I mean, Alcantara is out for this year and a decent chunk of next year. He had Tommy John surgery. Edward Cabrera just had some kind of injury, a shoulder impingement back on March 10th. So not exactly sure what's going to happen with him. Braxton Garrett was really solid for them last year, another lefty who I thought the Rangers might inquire about trading for, but he had shoulder soreness back in February of this year, and he has not come back, and I don't know the definite timetable for that. And so you have to think, okay, you say, hey, Marlins, look, you're in a division with the Braves. You're in a division with the Mets, who are trying. You're probably better than the Mets right now. You might even be better than the Mets next year, unless they go do something crazy this offseason, which, Steve Cohen is likely to spend a lot of money. But you also got the Phillies in your division. And the NL West is probably going to take at least one, if not two wild card spots. So, and the Phillies are probably going to take the other one. So you really think you're better than the Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks? And also maybe better than the Phillies or the Braves in your division? I don't think they are. And for the Brewers, they just lost Devin Williams for multiple months with a back injury, a stress fracture in his back. So that makes another hit for them. And they're in a division with, 5 teams that all have competitive aspirations for winning the NL Central. And I think 5 teams that have a legitimate shot. The Cardinals are no longer unbeatable. The Cubs are trying things. Cubs stole their own manager, stole the Brewers manager in division. And, if the Brewers want to say, okay, let's punt a little bit, let's trade Willie Adames, let's trade, Freddy Peralta, and, run it back next year, I could see them doing that. Also, if they want to hold on to Freddy Peralta, whenever they get back Brandon Woodruff in 2025, I could definitely see that as a possibility. I think Luzardo might be the more gettable of those two, because the Marlins need so much hitting help. But it would probably take a Leody Taveras and a Zeke Duran and maybe even a Jack Leiter as well. But to get one of the best lefty arms in baseball, to upgrade rotation, and to have a cheap controllable pitcher for 3 years, that's the thing. That's the kind of all-in move that you make that is definitely worth the risk. Coming up, we're talking about the Rangers game last night, the spring breakout game, and Wyatt Langford continuing to do incredible Wyatt Langford things. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live game highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick that you can plug in to your existing TV to provide access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us over at Locked On, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more, and keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't already, you've got to check it out. Trust me on this. To learn more, go to Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Shout out to the everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We'll be back next week, hopefully doing either on Monday or Tuesday, talking about my final opening day roster projection. There will be some changes again because we're not sure about these injuries, who's going to come back and when and how quickly they will be ready. Now, let's talk about the spring breakout game, the first ever inaugural spring breakout game. I was very excited to watch this. If you didn't know what it was at 5 p.m. last night on MLB TV, and the Rangers and Reds prospects faced off for 7 innings, which I thought was kind of weird. You're going to have a display game. You're only going to go 7 innings, but I digress. It was an interesting and fun way to start off the night before the Rangers played their game starting at 8 p.m. They had, against the big league Reds, they had the youngsters against the Reds facing off. Now, Brock Porter was, for me, the most interesting part of the Rangers in this spring breakout game. He looked pretty darn good, got a little rattled, had a comebacker that came off of his leg. They had a brief injury timeout. Thankfully, he was okay. But in the first half inning of the first spring breakout game ever, you do not want to see an injury to a guy who is a borderline top 100 prospect in baseball. Will probably be a consensus top 100 in baseball by midseason. But thankfully, he's all right. Had a couple of strikeouts, looked really, really nasty. The changeup looked pretty darn good. The fastball looked pretty darn good. I talked a lot with Grant Schiller on yesterday's episode about how excited he is about Brock Porter and how good and how high his potential is. Also got to see a little bit of Mitch Bratt, who looked mostly pretty solid. Hit around a little bit. Emiliano Teodo made his spring breakout debut. Didn't strike anybody out. Did hit a batter and allow a home run. But again, he will do that at times. Isaac Tiger looked pretty darn good. Really excited about his potential and also just his name. Very, very fun. Also a multi-hit game, extra base hit game for Cam Cauley, who has looked really darn good this spring. A double and a triple for him. He said he was thinking about going for the cycle, but again, not everybody played most of the game innings in this game. Pretty much everybody outside of Aaron Zavala was subbed out pretty quickly. Seeing Sebastian Walcott leading off and getting a first inning single the opposite way, that was exciting. Anthony Gutierrez hitting second. Ortiz in this one, 0-for-3 with, one strikeout. Just not a whole lot of offense for the Rangers in this one. Just not a whole lot of offense in general. A home run by Cam Collier, not to be confused with Cam Cauley. Cam Collier is the Reds prospect. Cam Cauley is the Rangers prospect. But I think the guy that I was most impressed with for both sides in this game was Rhett Lauder, the former first-round pick last year out of Wake Forest. Looked really darn good in his couple perfect innings of work. 2 innings, 2 strikeouts, no base runners. Looked really darn good. Just a fun competition overall. Rangers had their assistant GM, Ross Fenster, on the broadcast, and he provided some interesting insight talking about what he's looking for to get out of this farm system, some guys who he's excited about, and what he's looking for from them. Just a fun concept that I'm glad Major League Baseball introduced. Very glad that they televised it. Was really worried that this just wasn't going to be able to be watched by anybody who wasn't out there in Surprise. That would have been really frustrating, but still fun process, fun game. Hopefully they do it again next year, and hopefully the Rangers still have a lot of really good prospects to showcase next year. I'm sure Brock Porter will be game for doing this again. All the guys who were in this game said they love facing that top competition. You had guys all the way from low A to guys who haven't even been stateside yet to guys who were probably going to be in AAA. All kinds of levels in this game. That's something that's really, really interesting to see. Love the concept and really glad Major League Baseball introduced it. Didn't get to watch as many of the other top prospect games. Did get to see the at-bat of Paul Skeens versus Jackson Holiday. That was fun to watch, but just a fun concept, and glad that Major League Baseball introduced it. Now let's talk a little bit about last night's big league game, all the important stuff from the Rangers' big league game. Well, Jon Gray threw 5 innings, looked solid, was very, very economical with his pitch count. Still needed to go throw 10 more pitches in the bullpen because he was so economical. He thought he would only go 5 innings and would throw around, I believe, 60 pitches was what he was hoping for, and he only needed about 50 or so to get through 5 innings. That was a good sign. No walks, no runs, 3 hits, 3 strikeouts. Just pretty solid work from Jon Gray, who's going to be a pretty important part of this Rangers rotation, especially if they are not going to go get another starting pitcher. Gray is going to be the Rangers' number 2, I think, as of opening day. It'll be between him and Heaney and Dunning, because I think it's pretty safe to say that Bradford is going to be the number 5 in this rotation, if he's in this rotation. If it's not him, then it'll be Urania, or I don't even know. I think there's no other options at this point. I think it's just Urania or Bradford, because Danny Duffy is just being looked at as a reliever, not a starting pitcher like he was earlier in this spring. But the other thing that happened that was of note was, of course, Wyatt Langford continuing to do Wyatt Langford things after some brutal hit by pitches. I mean, the Raiders got hit by a pitch way too many times for any spring training game. Like, I was just so deeply annoyed of the Rangers getting hit by pitches. Carter got hit by a pitch. Walsh got hit by a pitch. Marcus Semien got hit by a pitch from Buck Farmer. That was deeply annoying. Looked like it hurt pretty badly, but of course it's Marcus Semien, so he's going to stay in the game. But just deeply frustrating to have that many guys hit by pitches in spring games. I know it's part of the game, but like 3 guys, 1 game, just chill. Chill, Reds, chill. That is not cool. But Wyatt Langford, of course, made them pay. He went 1 for 4 with a couple of strikeouts, and of course his one hit was an opposite field grand slam that was absolutely majestic. And you'd think going 1 for 4 with a home run, you'd think, okay, that's going to raise most guys' OPSs for spring training or for the regular season, whatever part of the season they're in. And nope, that OPS went down. The man went 1 for 4 with the home run, and his OPS went down. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. There's a 1250 OPS for a day if you go 1 for 4 with no walks, no hit by pitches, and 1 home run. That's a 1250 OPS, and it went down. That's nuts. The guy is incredibly good. Actually, it might have gone up just a tick. It's at 1248, but last I checked, it was at 1300. So, yeah, maybe my math is off there, but still, the kid is incredible. 5 home runs from the spring, 14 RBIs. Not that RBIs super duper matter in spring training, but hitting over 360, on base over 440, slugging over 800. I mean, I think the decision is made. I said it would be negligence to leave this guy off the opening day roster earlier this week. Maybe that was Monday, maybe that was Tuesday. I honestly can't remember. But at this point, it's like beyond negligence. It's just super duper negligence. I know that he's going to lose some development from his defense of not being able to play the outfield every day, but if the Rangers don't think he's ready to play outfield every day, then who cares? At this point, it's kind of a point of who cares. He's going to learn to play the outfield eventually, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. He's eventually going to be playing the outfield, playing defense, and he's going to be less than spectacular at it at first, and eventually he'll be okay to maybe pretty good, or he'll be below average, and he's going to hit like a freaking monster, and it won't freaking matter. I mean, I've said it a million times this entire spring training that it's nuts that the Rangers won the World Series and got Wyatt Langford in the same draft. Thank you, God, to the Detroit Tigers front office for saying, I'm not so sure about Langford. I think this kid, Max Clark, is going to be incredible. And I hope Max Clark is great. I hope he succeeds and thrives and what have you. The Pirates seeing a guy who holds 100 miles an hour into the 6th, 7th inning and thought, okay, we got to get us to Paul Skeens. All right, I get that. And the Nationals seeing Dylan Cruz being amazing from the time he was like 16 all the way till he was 21 in the draft and saying, yeah, we're more sure about this kid than Langford, who's been a beast for 2 years. And the Rangers said, okay. Well, it leaves us with Langford as the clear, best guy left in this draft. So I guess we'll take him. And they were already insanely high on him. I don't know if the Rangers had him number 1 or number 2 on their board, but I'm pretty sure he was way up there. And they were left with no choice but to draft the guy who is almost certainly the best hitter, best player in that draft class, or maybe in the last 5 draft classes, and they're going to put him hitting 3rd in their lineup on opening day, and he's going to be absolutely sensational. I mean, the Rangers are spoiled rotten right now. Rangers fans, just enjoy this for what it is. I mean, the Rangers are going to be pretty darn good, pretty darn fun, and whether they're trading for, Jesus Luzardo or Freddy Peralta or nobody, or they're not going to bring back Jordan Montgomery, or they're not going to sign Blake Snell, or they are, whatever happens, the team that's going into this season is going to be incredibly fun, incredibly good, and no matter where they finish in the standings, this is still the reigning World Series champ, adding 2 all-star caliber early 20-year-olds to their outfield for the next 6 or 7 or 8 or 20 years to come. It is a great time to be a Rangers fan and a great time to enjoy every Wyatt Langford home run, because that grand slam that he hit is not going to be his last in a Rangers uniform. That's going to do it for this week's shows. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.